Hi, this is the Business Guy. So what's better to protect your assets from lawsuits? A Cook Islands trust, Belize trust, or Nevis trust? I've established trust in all three jurisdictions. In fact, I believe our organization, Asset Protection Planners, has set up more offshore asset protection trusts than anyone in the world. Plus, I've been in the asset protection business since 1991. So to compare the trusts, what we have to look at is this. How strong is the asset protection in each jurisdiction? That is, what do the statutes say? How quickly does the trust protect assets? And can we trust the jurisdiction? In other words, is the jurisdiction a safe, trustworthy place? And I'm not talking about the banks. We usually use Swiss banks to hold the funds. I'm talking about the government, the culture, the reputation, and trustworthiness of the people. And then in the end, I'm going to tell you which trust I recommend and in what order, and which of these three trusts I've set up for myself and my family. So before you make any decisions, I want you to pay attention to all three things and listen to my conclusion. And if you appreciate this straightforward, no-holds-barred opinion from somebody with experience, please click the like button below so YouTube promotes this video. And you can also click the subscribe button below if you haven't already, so that when more videos come out like this one, you'll be up to date right away. First of all, let's look at the Cook Islands Trust. Cook Islands is south of Hawaii. It's part of New Zealand. They offer a type of trust that many use to protect their assets from lawsuits. It is an offshore asset protection trust established under the Cook Islands International Trust Act, originally established in 1984. The trust allows the one who established the trust, the settlor or grantor, to also be a beneficiary and enjoy the legal protection of trust assets. The Cook Islands does not recognize foreign court orders. It does not recognize foreign judgments. Plus, in order to attempt to reach trust assets, one must sue in the Cook Islands and overcome substantial legal hurdles. Then the creditor must prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt rather than a mere preponderance of the evidence. The same goes for Nevis. Now, the Nevis Asset Protection Trust is a trust established in the Caribbean island of Nevis under the Nevis International Exempt Trust Ordinance, NEITO, and NEITO was initially established in 1994. Amendments in 2015 further strengthened and enhanced the asset protection features of various legal tools, including a Nevis trust. And if you look at a comparison chart, you can see how the Nevis trust legislation stands above other jurisdictions. In 2015, an amendment stated that if a creditor wants to sue your trust in Nevis, the creditor must post a $100,000 bond, that's $270,000 East Caribbean dollars, with the Nevis Ministry of Finance before bringing legal action against the International Trust. Whereas the 2018 amendment changed the Nevis LLC bond requirement to any amount established by the Nevis High Court, the bond for the Nevis Trust remains at $100,000 US. Pretty expensive barrier to most people, isn't it? Okay, now the Belize Trust. Belizean trusts are formed and governed under the Trust Act of 1992, and when it comes to asset protection trusts, no country in the world offers more protection than Belize. Now let me insert this into the equation. Make sure you listen to the rest of the story, because things are not always what they appear. Continuing, why is this protection superior to that of other offshore trust jurisdictions? Belize took the best elements of trust laws created in other nations, and then they refined and improved them. Top United Kingdom and United States trust attorneys drafted these statutes. Now, once you form a Belize trust, the foreign court cannot set it aside. The legal language in the statutes makes this and other claims against the trust unambiguous. There is no potential for any other interpretation. In addition, there's no waiting period for asset protection. Open a Belize trust, place your assets into it, and it protects your assets from then on. This is provided that you have properly established the trust. Plus, you must place your assets, such as your bank account, in a jurisdiction that does not recognize foreign judgments. Nobody we know of has penetrated such a trust. Now, before we make any decisions, hang on while I give you my assessment. Let's start with the statute of limitations on fraudulent conveyance. Now, fraudulent conveyance or fraudulent transfer is generally a civil matter, not a criminal matter. It is where a debtor has moved money or other assets, so a creditor cannot reach it. So in this context, the statute of limitations on fraudulent transfer is the time period that must elapse when the courts refuse to hear a challenge of assets into the trust. For example, let's say you put $1 million into an asset protection trust in the Cayman Islands. In the Cayman Islands, the $1 million must be in the trust for 6 years before it is protected from fraudulent transfer claims by a creditor. In the Cook Islands, Belize, and Nevis, the assets are protected right away. Now that said, in the Cook Islands and Nevis, there is a 1 to 2 year time period where some somebody can file a fraudulent conveyance claim in the Cook Islands or Nevis courts to challenge the transfer of assets into the trust in one of these two jurisdictions. So that's 1 year from the time the trust was filed and funded, or 2 years from the cause of action, or the reason why the lawsuit was filed in the first place, such as the car wreck. Again, unlike the Cayman Islands, it is not saying that the assets aren't protected during that time period. They're protected right away. Moreover, in order to win a fraudulent conveyance claim, the creditor in the Cook Islands or Nevis must prove his or her case beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, in most civil cases, the prevailing party must prove its case by a preponderance of the evidence, that is, say, 51% to 49%. For a fraudulent transfer claim in the Cook Islands or Nevis, it is more like 97% to 3% that the debtor set up the trust not to defraud any creditor out of the assets, but that creditor in particular. Now, this is especially hard to prove when one can also give a whole slew of other reasons for setting up the trust. And this may include estate planning. Since the Cook Islands and Nevis trust can last indefinitely, most jurisdictions have limits on how long the trust can last until it's dissolved. International diversification is another reason for setting up an offshore trust. So you just want to make sure that the record never shows you saying, yes, I set up the trust to keep my assets away from you, Mr. Creditor. And fortunately, there are plenty of other acceptable reasons. Now, we've set up more trusts in the Cook Islands than any other company in the world, bar none. And we've never had a client lose money from a judgment that has been placed into one of our Cook Islands trusts. So the biggest misconception about the statute is that people think that assets are not protected until the 1 to 2 year time period has elapsed. That's not the case. It's not that the assets are not protected until the time has elapsed. Again, if somebody tries to bring a challenge in the Cook Islands courts, the courts won't even hear the case challenging the transfer of assets into the trust after that time period. So that's right, as we've said, the assets are protected immediately. So it's like this. Let's say you have two fences protecting the gold in Fort Knox. The first fence has a gate that's open for a year or two. Anybody can walk in. But there's a second fence inside that fence, and the second fence is double-walled. It sits 50 feet high, with razor wire on top. It's manned with machine guns on every corner and people with bazookas pointed at you, ordered to fire at will if you get within 20 yards. So sure, the first fence has an opening for a little while, but the second wall is so sturdy, just gives the temporary illusion of penetrability. So as promised, we talked about the strength, we talked about how quickly the assets are protected, so essentially all three jurisdictions are exceedingly strong and protect assets right away. So finally, as we said, let's look at the trustworthiness of the jurisdiction. Do the people have integrity? Can you trust the trustees? Can you trust the government officials and the courts and the judges to do the right thing and not accept bribes if somebody tries to sue you there? Well, first of all, we have vetted the trustees that we work with. We have done business with them in a majority of instances for many decades. But let's take a helicopter view of each place. First of all, the Cook Islands. The Cook Islands, as we have said, is part of New Zealand. So how do you measure the trustworthiness of a jurisdiction? Now, a good measure is the Global Corruption Perceptions Index published each year by Transparency International. And Transparency International is a non-governmental organization, and their website says they have one vision: a world in which government, business, civil society, and the daily lives of people are free from corruption. They have more than 100 chapters worldwide and lead the fight against corruption around the globe. And when you look at the Global Corruption Perceptions Index, New Zealand has been the number 1, 2, or 3 most trusted jurisdiction in the world since the index was published. And that's out of about 180 countries since Transparency International first published the index in 1995. Through the years, New Zealand has held the number 1 spot more than any other country on the list. In fact, our experience has been the same. As part of New Zealand, we have experienced nothing but integrity from those who have served our clients in the Cook Islands, including the trustees, government officials, and the banks. Okay, now Belize. Is Belize trustworthy? Well, last time Belize made the list, it was the 107th most trusted country in the world. I've seen bribery happen in Belize. Now, I've never seen a trustee do dishonest things, but I have seen bankers do dishonest things. Fortunately, I saw that happen only once, and that was quickly rectified by the Belize courts. Despite its tiny size, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime consistently ranks Belize as one of the top 5 nations with the highest murder rates. According to the most recent statistics, the murder rate was 29 out of 100,000 inhabitants. Jewelry and purse snatching, pickpocketing, armed robbery, home invasions, assault, and homicide. Unfortunately, tourists are sometimes targeted by these criminals. Okay, now St. Kitts and Nevis. St. Kitts and Nevis, which consists of 2 main islands by the same names, is not on the list. But I've been doing business there since 1994, and I know the 2 most recent premiers of Nevis personally. In fact, you can see their pictures of me and them on the home pages of our websites. Now, I have found the island of Nevis safer than St. Kitts. Exceedingly safer. So for my personal experience, I would put Nevis, not the 2 islands together, but Nevis alone, at about number 30 of 180 countries, right around the Bahamas and Barbados. And to give you some perspective, the US sits at number 24 on the list of around 180 countries. Now, one benefit of the Nevis Trust is that there are statutes against freezing trust assets while the transfer is being challenged. In the Cook Islands, there is the possibility of a Mariva injunction, and this is the British and Canadian version of a US temporary restraining order. This orders a defendant not to move assets they own or control wherever they may be, in whoever's name they may be, in order to safeguard a plaintiff's clear and apparent legal claims. Now, there is a simple solution to this in the Cook Islands. We simply convert a Cook Islands trust to a Nevis trust in order to slip the noose. That way, the protector can move the trust to a jurisdiction where asset freezes are not legal. So what's the conclusion? Or better yet, okay, Mr. Asset Protection Trust Guy, what have you done for yourself and your own family? And my answer is that I have a Cook Islands trust for my family. With all things considered, I like the jurisdictions in this order. Cook Islands first, Nevis is a very close second, very close, and Belize is a distant third. Though the statute of limitations in Belize is 0, I feel more comfortable recommending a jurisdiction with a crystal clean reputation of integrity, and Cook Islands first and Nevis second meet those requirements and have earned my trust. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. This is The Business Guy.